Keir Starmer, campaigning in Barry Island, was sticking to the line that no decision had been made on whether Diane Abbott could stand for Labour in the election. But his deputy, Angela Rayner, had a different line.
I don't see any reason why Diane Abbott can't stand as a Labour MP going forward. She's been cleared as part of an investigation. That is a process. I'm not involved in that process. And for me, I just see that if she wants to stand, then I don't see any reason why she can't stand.
The situation in relation to Diane Abbott is that no decision has been taken to bar her. And, you know, we have to remember that she was a trailblazer as an MP.
Differing answers from the top of the Labour Party, the latest twist in a saga which Labour is struggling to resolve. The day after Diane Abbott told supporters she was determined to stand.
By any means possible, I will be the candidate for Hackney North.
Questions over whether Diane Abbott could be banned from running again came as fellow left-wing MP Lloyd Russell Moyle was told a new investigation meant he would not be allowed to stand. And candidate Faiza Shaheen was told that tweets spanning 10 years meant she was banned from running in a target seat.
I think there is a purge. I think they don't want critical voices, and I think that's a real shame. I think the Labour Party has to be a broad church.
Do you think all of this is driven by Starmer or the people around him?
He's the leader of the party. He knows me. He came here so much in 2019. He bigged me up multiple times on Twitter about what a brilliant candidate I was. And then today I just saw that he was saying that I wasn't a good candidate. And that really, you know, you can take this away from me, but please don't belittle my credentials. I've worked so hard in my life and people know me locally.
It looks like a purge and it feels like a purge. So it's a purge, and it's a purge that I think, if there is any good in it, it is that it's telling the British people things they need to know about Keir Starmer. Firstly, he's very intolerant of dissent. He's an authoritarian. Secondly, he's been very economical with the truth. I mean, having conned his own party during the leadership campaign, he has now misled the whole public about the treatment of Diane Abbott in particular. And thirdly, he does seem to have a problem with strong black women.
Like Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott doesn't want to run as an independent, but her statement yesterday appeared to leave that option open.
Is he trying to purge the left?
It looks like it, but as I'm disturbed at the way Diane has been treated, you can see what happened with me, but there has to be a voice for justice, for peace and socialism in our society.
This is Keir Starmer.
The moves against the left coincided with some last-minute candidates from the right being parachuted into safe Labour seats, triggering speculation that some anti-Corbyn hardliners in jobs around the Labour leader were driving what Diane Abbott called a cull.
He doesn't get involved in selections or disciplinary matters. He deliberately kept out of that. He's a lawyer. He knows how dangerous it is to do that. But these rules were made in his image, and they are about changing the party.
Some people are speculating that some of the people he's put in to run the Labour Party are actually running rings around him. They're doing all this.
I'm not sure that's true. I don't think he's part of any faction. I think there may be sometimes a sort of codependency with different factions at different times. He was elected on a sort of centre-left ticket. He's now, probably running the party with the help of a sort of centre-right faction of the Labour Party. But this is all about not just winning, but also governing.
Tonight, Labour tried to change the subject, announcing that Mark Logan, elected as a Conservative MP in 2019, not running in this election, is voting Labour in 5 weeks' time. Campaigning in Somerset, the Lib Dems leader Ed Davey dug another photo stunt out of the bag. Rishi Sunak was campaigning in Milton Keynes, pushing the Tory message that Labour was bound to raise taxes, and specifically VAT.
And with the Labour Party, the only certainty that you'll get is that they're going to put up your taxes. As clear as night follows day, that's what they always do, and that's what they will do.
When I met up with the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, he was unconvinced by Labour ruling out VAT rises, but keen to mock Keir Starmer's stalled attempt to ditch Diane Abbott.
This is a person who still can't say, even today, if Diane Abbott's going to be allowed to stand as a candidate for the Labour Party at the next election. This is not decisive. This is someone who can't make up his mind on very straightforward issues to do with party management. Now, if you can't deal with Diane Abbott, then what about the much bigger decisions that he's going to have to take as Prime Minister, including running the economy, which I can tell you means making very difficult choices and trade-offs. You will always find a Conservative government will make those difficult choices because we will always put the economy first.
Some people would say Rishi Sunak might have more respect from the British population if he'd done something similar to Liz Truss, maybe purged her from the party.
I think he has taken very difficult decisions, including reversing nearly all of the policies that she stood on and started to implement, as indeed I did, as some of the first things that I did.
But he never really wants to take her on, does he? He doesn't even mention her by name.
Well, I think
she's the ghost in this election.
Look at the substance of decisions that affect the lives of people up and down this country.
But he didn't feel strong enough to take her on.
If you look at those difficult decisions, you know, £3,000 to the average family, you know, increasing taxes, which is the last thing Conservative governments want to do, but which was necessary to restore our public finances after the inflation crisis, not giving in to public sector strikes. These are the difficult decisions that have a big impact on all of our day-to-day living.
Would Rishi Sunak really be in command of his party if he came back as Prime Minister? The party didn't select him. The party nearly went for Boris Johnson after Liz Truss. There were more than 100 nominations for Boris Johnson amongst the MPs. This is not a party. This is not Rishi Sunak's party, one that he commands, is it?
Well, I have worked with many Prime Ministers over recent years, and it's been my privilege to work very closely with Rishi Sunak, and I can tell you this is someone who works incredibly hard, who has the public interest at heart. I can tell you I believe this election will be a lot closer than many people think, and when Rishi Sunak wins, I think he will have extraordinary authority because people will see.
He'll finally have got it, because he hasn't had it in this Parliament, has he?
People will see that this is a man who says what he believes, even if it's what people don't want to hear. One of the reasons he didn't win the leadership of the Conservative Party first time round was because he wasn't prepared to say the kind of crowd-pleasing things that would win those elections. He wanted to be honest with people about what was possible and what wasn't possible.
What does that tell us about the Conservative Party?
Well, I think
they listen to nonsense, in your view, rather than someone who has a shrewd judgment.
Well, I think what it tells us is that, you know, the Conservative Party has learnt a big lesson over what happened.
Has it?
Well, I think it has.
I want to ask you about your message on tax today. You say Labour would raise VAT. They say they wouldn't.
4 times this week, Labour refused to say they had no plans to increase VAT. Then suddenly overnight they changed that position.
They've got quite a good track record of sticking to pledges like that when they say they're not going to raise taxes. Probably better than the Conservatives in government. You look back at Blair's record in '97.
Quite the opposite. Just look at what's happened under Keir Starmer. We had the
I was talking about in government.
Yeah, no, but I'm just talking about the people who are leading the Labour Party today, who want to be the government.
I'm talking about their record in government.
Yeah, but I'm talking,
and your record in government.
Well, I'm happy to talk about my record in government too, but the people who are leading the Labour Party today, they've changed their position on VAT this week. They changed their position after months of wrangling on whether they were going to borrow £28 billion more. And when Labour governments don't know what they want to do, taxes go up.
Some people would say the reason why you're so confident in asserting that Labour will have to raise taxes is because your current numbers don't add up.
Well, I think that is a perfectly reasonable question to ask because public finances are very tight, and what you get with a Conservative government is the discipline to take difficult decisions to keep public spending under control. We will increase it, but we will keep the increase to 1% in real terms.
And we know that means cuts in a lot of departments on top of the cuts that have already happened. But you haven't told us what those cuts look like.
The cuts to unprotected departments, so not the health or schools or the Ministry of Defence, but unprotected departments, would be about 2% a year. And what I announced in a budget...
On top of the austerity they've already been through?
Well, yes, going forward, 2% a year. By the way, that austerity has not been happening in recent years. It was in the early period, but that's what they say, and that's why in the budget I announced plans to increase public sector productivity, public sector efficiency by 2% a year. I'm not pretending at all these aren't difficult decisions. What I'm saying is, which government do you trust to show restraint on public spending so that we can carry on bringing the tax burden down The Labour Party, that's got nearly £40 billion of unfunded spending commitments for the next Parliament, lots of worthy things, but things they can't explain where the money will come from, or a Conservative government that will take the difficult decisions that we know are the right ones for the long-term health of the economy.
Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Gary.
And just to clarify, the Labour candidate for Brighton Kemp Town, who was blocked from standing, is Lloyd Russell Moyle, the MP there since 2017. Now, no one from the Labour front bench was available to be interviewed tonight, but Matt Rack is the head of the Fire Brigades Union, affiliated to the Labour Party, and currently president of the Trades Union Congress. He joins us from Durham. Matt Rack, do you agree with Angela Rayner that Diane Abbott should be allowed to stand for Labour?
I absolutely agree with Angela on that point, yes. Look, we've got 14 years of this government that has wrecked our public services, stagnated wages, attacked our pensions, and I think millions of people want to go ahead with the election and see the back of the Tories. And instead of messing around with these things, we need to get on, we need to get candidates in place, and Diane Abbott should definitely be one of those candidates.
Right, so it's been a huge distraction, hasn't it, from your message that you've just set out there about attacking the Tories. Instead, we're talking about Labour splits, aren't we?
I think, yes, and I think that's unfortunate, and I hope the Labour Party can pull itself together and get this sorted out, because we don't want that distraction. People want to focus on the issues in the election about building an economy for the future, the issue of workers' rights, which is a big issue for the trade unions in this election, and some promises that Labour has made about workers' rights, trade union rights, and rights in the workplace, and we want to be discussing those things rather than internal Labour Party distractions. But I think Labour Party democracy is important, and yes, I think Diane Abbott should be a candidate, and those issues need to be addressed, and the rights of Labour Party members need to be respected in that process.
When you talk about Labour Party democracy, Sir Keir Starmer's point is that, this is all going to plan and no decision has been taken yet, and, that's not a decision for him, the leader. Do you buy that?
Well, I hope that is the case. I didn't create this news story. This appears to be because people have been briefing that Diane Abbott won't be a candidate, and that's why there has been a bit of questioning about it and quite a bit of anger about it among Labour Party members, including affiliated unions like mine.
So it's a wound that has been self-inflicted by the leadership, has it?
Well, I'm not sure it's by the leadership, I don't know. Keir Starmer, as you say, has said that there's no decision made. Angela Rayner, the deputy leader, has said there's no reason why Diane Abbott can't stand. Let's just stop messing around and get on with it and let Diane Abbott be a candidate. The quicker that decision is made, the better for everyone, and we can get on with the debate that the members of the public want to see between the Labour Party and the outgoing government. That's what people want to hear about. What's going to happen to the economy, jobs, homes and public services.
But they do also want to hear about how the party has changed, and Keir Starmer's point, his one-word pledge is change, that the party has changed and he's the man who's changed it. Doesn't this broader cull, as it were, of left-wing candidates show that to be the case and show swing voters that it's safe to vote Labour? You attracted a Conservative MP today, for example.
Well, OK, I think it is bizarre that Natalie Elphicke was welcomed into the Labour Party while Diane Abbott's future is in question. I think that will not sit well with many Labour voters and Labour Party members or unions like ourselves. Labour claims to be a broad church. It should be a broad church. That there should be a place for dissenting voices. There should be a place for the left and for trade unionists and so on. And I hope that is what comes out of the next few days. And the clearest way that could be demonstrated is by Keir Starmer making it clear that Diane Abbott can be a Labour candidate. And I think that would be broadly welcomed across the spectrum in the Labour Party as well, by the way.
Well, Mark Logan, another former Tory MP, you mentioned Natalie Elphicke, but there's another one today that says he'll be voting Labour. That's a bit of a coup, isn't it?
Well, he's welcome to vote Labour. Unfortunately, he's been part of a government that's been wrecking our economy and wrecking jobs and lives for the past 14 years.
Well, maybe he's had a Damascene conversion.
Welcome. He can be converted as much as he likes. It doesn't stop the mess that they've made of the economy and of public services and of people's lives and hopes for the future. Yes, it's welcome that people will, and obviously we want people who voted Conservative in 2019 to vote Labour this time, and I hope many, many more ordinary people will do so. The best way of doing that is for Labour to give a clear message of how it's going to change things for the better and how it's going to engage. But that does mean making sure that there are different voices heard from the Labour movement.
Well, what does it say about Keir Starmer's ability and strength to run the government? He might be a number 10 in a few weeks if he can't sort of deal decisively, apparently, with these sort of internal machinations.
Look, I think in the next couple of days this will be passed. I hope that we get past this with Diane Abbott being a candidate and with an end to speculation that anybody on the left has no place in the Labour Party, because that is not the way to build unity. There are a whole range of views in the Labour Party and the Labour movement. And, you know, I'm from an affiliated union. We want the rights of workers to be central to this election, and that's what we want to get on with debating and discussing and making the case for.
Matt Rack, thanks very much. Well, while Conservative and Labour continue to trade blows over who will raise taxes or has unfunded spending plans, many independent economists argue that both parties have really unrealistic plans for the public finances. Our economics correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi, is here to dig a little deeper. Helia.
Cathy, it's getting to be one of the big themes of the election, fiscal claim and counterclaim. Let's talk about taxes right now. We know the government collects £985 billion in taxes. That's the tax pie behind you. But in this election, both parties keep promising voters that they're not going to raise any of the big ones. Apparently, there won't be any headline increase in income tax, in national insurance. Today, Labour and Conservatives also ruled out increasing VAT. We don't think business rates is going up or corporation tax, which begs the question, what's left? Now, there is a list that's going to come up behind you of other taxes, perhaps easier targets, perhaps stealthier taxes. But the problem, Cathy, is that some of those taxes will still hurt consumers, things like air passenger duty. And what NISA are warning today is that both the Labour Party and the Conservative plans are simply not credible, and they're going to need to show they're working out in the manifesto to be believed.
I mean, a lot of people might feel very overtaxed. So, you know, what's the problem with making these commitments to ruling out tax increases?
I don't think it's the ruling out the tax increases. I think the point is about being disingenuous about what the consequences are. What NISA are warning is that if you stick to these plans, then you're going to have pretty dire cuts to departmental spending, 14% across all departments that aren't ring-fenced. And the issue for NISA, and a growing number of economists actually, is that both parties have tied themselves to fiscal rules.
So are we putting too much trust in these fiscal rules, do you think?
Well, let's go through the fiscal rules. The first one is that debt comes down as a share of GDP by the end of the fifth year of the forecast. The second one is that the deficit is less than 3% of GDP, again, by the end of the fifth year of the forecast. Now, these rules, Cathy, were designed to constrain government borrowing. But let's take a look at how effective they've been at doing that. Here's another graph. At the beginning of the graph, that's when Gordon Brown started to create fiscal rules. It was 36% of national income. He wanted debt to stay under 40%. But then what happened? The bank crashes happened. Since then, we've had the pandemic, we've had war, and you can see our national debt is now almost 93% of national income. So the fact that the fiscal rules exist are exasperated also by the fact that they're a rolling five-year fiscal programme, which means Chancellor after Chancellor, Cathy, game it by busting the rules for the first 4 years and pretending there's a magic fifth year when everything gets better. And for NISA, the issue is that with these fiscal rules, we can't invest, we don't get productivity, and that leads to our standard of living coming down.
Helia, thanks very much.